Hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining us for another session of 10-minute Wellbeing Tips for Managers. As you know, I'm Carolyn, but I'm not going to be talking today. We have a special guest, Bill Thomas, who is the Program Manager for Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity Training in our Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity. And a few weeks ago, several of you said that you'd like to have some more content on cultural humility. Some of you said cultural competence, and we reached out to Bill, and he's offered very kindly to give us an overview of that today. So Bill, I'm going to hand over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Carolyn. And so when we talk about cultural humility, we are really talking about how does that apply to being an authentic leader in this world that we live in, where differences are very apparent and part of our everyday life. So I want to just begin with a little model that's been around since after World War II, and it's how we share information about each other. And it was developed by two psychologists after World War II, and their names were Joe and Harry. So this is not new age in any way, but the four windows, the four panes of the window talk about what do I know about myself and what do you know about me. And you'll see that yellow area is that shared information, what we've learned about each other. So at 11:29, you did not know that I was the program manager for education and training in ODIHE. You know that now because it's been shared. But you'll notice that there's areas sometimes that I don't know about myself, and that's my blind spot. You may see it about me. You may hear it in my language, in my conversation with you. And then there's also that way I meet the world and what I know about myself, but I don't necessarily share right away. So even though it says facade here, we don't mean anything false, but it's really, as the poet Eliot said, the face I put on to meet the day. So just to keep that information in the background for how do I approach others who are different from me? And then of course there is that area posited what I don't know about myself and you don't know either. And again, that may be part of the unconscious bias that I start to learn about myself as I grow and develop. So when we think about cultural humility, what we're talking about here is that sense that I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. And even though my professional training has made me an expert in some areas, but when I think about people who are different from me, I must recognize that I can move from being self-oriented to other-oriented, to being able to look at others and look at them with respect and not be in emotion, and not be in a stance of, well, they're different from me, so they're not as good as me. And that lack of superiority, letting go of whatever I might recognize as my privilege, or sometimes don't even recognize, but it's there. And then being able, cultural humility is being able then to entertain thoughts, hypotheses, rather than automatically drawing conclusions. It could be this, rather than it definitely is this. And if you'll see the quote there, humility, it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And that's not just a play on words, it's really a way of how do I approach the world and approach others. So again, as we combine that with the notion of being culturally competent, what I think we're talking about is that I am aware of my own cultural worldview. And how do I move to that space of a non-expert, if you will, in cultural differences? But when I talk about being culturally competent and combine that with a humility, I start to learn about different cultural practices and worldviews. And I develop some of those cross-cultural skills, such as listening, such as empathy, such as not always having to be the expert. And there are a number of outlines of what some of those cross-cultural skills are. Now, the problem sometimes with some of those outlines is that they give us tips and tricks. So years ago, there was a book published about kiss, bow, or shake hands. And it supposedly gave you, 300 or 400 pages of, all right, if you're in an Asian culture, do this. If you're in a South American culture, do this. And sometimes those can be helpful, but as I want to just remind everybody here, one size does not fit all. I've learned that, for example, when I've been in Latin America, that even my limited Spanish sometimes gets me in trouble because the meaning of a word in Spanish in Honduras may be very different than Puerto Rico. And then there's that notion of intersectionality. And what that simply means is each person's identity is a confluence of race, gender, background, religion, all kinds of things, gender expression. And so sometimes some of those things are more important to me than to others. So I have a good friend whose background is Haitian, and she was telling me last week, I have a hard time with experiencing the African American identity because it's not mine, even though I am a person of color. And then the third danger is that sometimes my tricks can backfire. I may think I'm being very culturally competent by starting to speak in a foreign language to somebody, and then they will come back to me and say, well, I don't speak Tagalog, or I don't speak Spanish, or whatever it might be. And remember, again, those tips are sometimes based on assumptions. Most people are like this, but like we said at the very start, one size does not fit all. And again, the danger of tips and tricks is that I run the risk of being misunderstood. I may be genuinely curious about somebody else, and the problem is that they see me as putting them down with the question, for example, where are you from? So just a couple of thoughts as we end the 10 minutes or come to the end of it. What's our manager tip? Number 49 out of all of what we're talking about today. Notice, pay attention, observe, listen to people when they're speaking. What are they doing? Is it similar to what you do, or is it different? And then that's the opportunity to engage with others. And the Greek philosopher Heraclitus said we have, Epictetus rather said, we have two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. And the Gestalt psychologists often talk about saying the statement behind the question. So sometimes if I'm being culturally humble, I will state what my intention is before I ask a question that has the potential of backfiring. And then finally, to be culturally humble is really to commit to being open to feedback about my own behavior. When I get somebody, Andrea, Meg, or whoever, or Rich, and they look at me with a funny look that doesn't fit what I was expecting to get, then I can be open to asking what their reaction might be. So I work in the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity. We have many resources and services for you. We do online trainings. We do in-group trainings as well. I have two of them coming up tomorrow, for example. We can provide different resources, and you can go to our website and you'll see connections to not just cultural resources, but also language resources. And we welcome you to be in touch with us more. So again, my information is right here, and I'm certainly welcome to explore more with each and every one of you.